Bienvenue Natalie, bienvenidos Isabel, bienvenidos Alejandra, pasad por favor. Hallo Gäste, herzlich willkommen. Thank you for gracing this event with your presence. I truly appreciate it. In particular, in view of the fact that I am here to champion the benefits of learning poetry to recite aloud. Please don't rush to have me confined to a lunatic asylum with the hurry. Allow me to ask you several questions to know where we stand first. Who of you had to memorize and recite poems, passages of prose in class when you went to school? Please keep your hands up just for one innocent yes, no question. Can you still recite at least one of them up until now? Please hold your hand for me not to. Yeah. Sure you can. What about you? All of them. Interesting. What about you, sir? Can you still recite a poem you learned ages ago now? Do please? Please don't, I'm kidding. I have absolutely no intention to call your bluff, or anybody else's for that matter, because I know that I will lose. If we recite a poem, a chunk of verse when we are young, these fragments tend to stay with us for life, especially if the chime resonate with us and reach into our mesh of inner meanings. A couple of more questions with your permission. Who of you requires your students to memorize and recite poems in class? If not to require, encourage, motivate, bribe with all kind of bonuses. If not in front of the class, to you personally? No? Okay, if there isn't any, we must do without. And the final question of mine, for the time being at least, is there anybody here present who exerts oneself to commit to memory the poems from the literature program before teaching them in class? Why? What for? A legitimate question. The road not taken, count the day lost, Ozymandias, as I grew old, Kubla's Khan, the journey of the Magi. Not on the list, yeah. You've passed your test on vigilance, no. Grandmother, introduction to poetry. What for? What for is not an idle question, of course. Really, why should we go the extra mile, memorize and recite the poems, if we can read them with grace and emotion? Or even let our students listen to the poems pre-recorded on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, by a native speaker of English and a professional elocutionist to boot. The very idea seems eccentric, not to say masochistic, right? And an overwhelming majority of education gurus see eye to eye with you on this point. They believe that exercises in memorizing and reciting poetry are passé, a thing of the past. An archaic curiosity without any educative value. Never mind poetry, a fairly large number of very respectable individuals, scientists, business executives, entrepreneurs, Elon Musk, Alibaba's Jack Ma among them, developmental psychologists, Prince EA, the world top chefs, Dudi Amsalim and Ifat Shasha Bitton. Wow, admirable, adorable people. Leading educators claim that learning by heart in general is pointless to the Google and smartphone generation. The students no longer should be forced to hold in their heads facts and figures. After all, this information is readily available on the internet. Laissez-faire is fair, it's true. Such basic facts as the key historical places, names, dates, the multiplication table are a mouse click away via Google, Wikipedia, online dictionaries, the calculator. 7 times 8. How much? 56? Are you positive? 58, no? 8? Let me see. Pam pararam. voila, and Bob is your uncle. As simple as that. 58, I was right. It always shows what I want to see. This reminds me of George Osborne, a former British Chancellor of the Exchequer. He was flummoxed by a 7-year-old boy who'd ask him that very question, what 7 lots of 8 was, on Sky News. Anybody here blessed to be born under the British Union Jack flag? Katie? Somebody else? No? Katie, you were actually born in Great Britain. For your information, I am an incorrigible #1 Anglophile in the world. Long live the United Kingdom and the royal family, the land of gracious and chivalrous pioneers. Katie, not a cat in hell's chance you watched the interview on Sky News, YouTube? No? Anybody? Not highly, but recommended. Rather amusing as Osborne dodges answering the question and tries without much conviction to laugh it off. Must have been a little worrying for British citizens that the Chancellor of the Exchequer doesn't seem to know simple maths, basic math. On the other hand, as the former Secretary of the United States of America, Hillary Clinton, said at the Benghazi hearing, what difference does it make? Who really cares whether Osborne knows basic maths or doesn't? My firm conviction, he does. No more than most of us present here. You know, kids, an abortive attempt at being funny happens to the best of us. And Osborne is a genius. Surely he was as good in his position as his predecessors and his numerous successors, all of them astute politicians and honorable, decent human beings. Comme toujours, it's all or nothing. And of course, the apple of my eye. It's always here. It's always at hand. According to the champions of the next generation, the tedious rote learning must be superseded by authentic and dynamic one, whatever that may mean. And it would be a better approach for us to teach our students to think creatively, another buzzword, so that they learn to access, interpret, and apply the information available online. Objective knowledge, as they insist, does not exist. Kids should construct knowledge for themselves. And our role, you understand, teachers are no longer the fountain of information, nothing to speak of knowledge. The internet is. We are to construct experiences which will enable our charges to learn. And the coup de grace, the final mortal blow to learning by heart. Memorizing poetry, as many of them claim, is not even a thinking activity. Touché. God knows how the opponents of memorization have come to this far-reaching conclusion. One thing, though, is obvious, not through their own vast personal experience. Because those of you who have been there, old hands, my dear baby boomers, those who have been around know all too well that memorizing poetry is highly challenging, demanding a strenuous mental effort activity, considerably more stringent and vigorous than, no offense meant, than solving crosswords, or even playing sheshbesh, backgammon. Backgammon. I'm enamored of this word. My euphemism, my dysphemism, a more appropriate word here, for all invectives and expletives. Backgammon, Manchester United, backgammon radicals, music to my ears. And by far more rewarding and meaningful for that matter. But it's our word. Again, their word. There is so many, they're legion, and they're so backgammon respectable. And they're rote learning. Oh my God. It does have such a notoriously, infamously negative, nefarious connotation. A drill and kill exercise, thoughtless repetition, parrot-like imitation, dull, impersonal, ineffective. There is torture lacking in the very word rote, which is conjectured to derive from the Latin word rota, wheel, torture, breaking wheel. Edvard Munch, The Scream. Precisely. Horrible, isn't it? However, I would like to allay your most grave apprehensions. There are quite a few inconsistencies, fundamental flaws in their reasoning. And for starters, there is no such a thing as rote learning. We can safely throw out to rot this regurgitative rote web. There is nothing for it. As sad as it may sound, human beings are not parrots. It just doesn't work that way. When I was in the 6th grade, if there was one subject which I intensely disliked, well, honestly, I disliked all of them. School. Okay. But intensely, it was physics. In my day, all the subjects in the curriculum used to be mandatory, under duress, for better, for worse. From the very outset, from the get-go, I convinced myself, it was pretty easy, that physics was not my cup of tea, that I would never excel in physics. And I must say that I was absolutely right about that. So it's easy to guess what happened next. I played ostrich, blissfully ignoring the subject until I got myself into a fix, into very hot waters. Oh yeah, I was in trouble, in severe and painful one at that. You see, Dave Saxton's Palaster from J. Stewart's The Split Cherry Tree was Professor Herbert in comparison with my pa, Gregory, who believed more devoutly and more literally in the precept, spare the rod, spoil the child. And those few who know me well can witness that I'm not spoiled. Funny? Yeah. Yeah, progress, side-splitting, gut-busting. Somehow, from what little I remember then, it was not fun for me at all. Strange, isn't it? Anyway, with my back to the wall, mon derrière pour être honnête, pour être plus précis au pied du mur, I was highly motivated to turn things around by preparing for my next test in physics, which was about atoms, the structure of atoms. Give me a break, Hanan. 6th grade, what did you expect? Quantum mechanics? Yeah, no big deal. Who doesn't know the structure of atoms? No, you know the structure of atoms, don't you? No? Goodness gracious, how will we get along now? Okay, don't panic. I'll enlighten you. Just sit back and relax to imbibe nectar of supreme knowledge. C'est pas la mer à boire. It's not rocket science, it's it. Ask Hanan. Atoms consist of electrons, or myriad, zillions upon zillions of electrons surrounding the nucleus, which contains protons and neutrons. Electrons, protons, neutrons. So far, so good. Yeah? Du gâteau. Un morceau du gâteau. Electron is a negatively charged particle with a mass. Now try to remember, better jot it down. It may come in handy one day. With a mass of 1,836 times less than that of proton, but equal to the latter in its magnitude. Proton, why are you giggling? Trust me, in Russian, it sounds even more arcane, even more esoteric and recondite. Russian, Hebrew, English, it was all Greek to me, mere verbiage. I didn't care a brass farthing about the good guys, the positively charged protons, considerably less about those limpet-like fellows sitting on the fence, neutrons, neither here nor there, cowards, right? Yet alone the miscreants. Those renegades, negatively charged electrons, good for nothings. That is exactly what I thought they were after I read the first 2 paragraphs, and which, to my sheer astonishment, proved to be inestimably valuable and valued citizens of the realm of atoms, acting as primary carriers of electricity in solids. You didn't know that, did you? No, you can't say you've come here for nothing. Needless to say, I did not understand what I was learning. I did not want to understand what I was learning. What I wanted was to drum that spooky stuff into this blockhead and pass the test. No, not even with flying colors, somehow pass the test and get my importunate parents off my back, figuratively and literally. But, as the former Secretary of the United States of America, Hillary Clinton, said with respect to her email controversy, I should have known better. It did not occur exactly like I had envisaged. Our life is unpredictable, full of surprises, hard to acknowledge, but very often of good ones. Little did I know that my valiant effort that evening would prove a tangible turning point in my troubled relationship with physics. If it was not the beginning of beautiful friendship, surely it was the start of tolerable acquaintanceship. To which the savvy observer may inquire, how come? How can it be? What's the catch? The catch is that learning and repeating things, even without initial understanding, brings the comfort and security of the intimate situation. If the known by heart was repeated by me many times, and I had to go over what I'd learned by rote again and again, not to spill the valuable information before the money time, before the test. As the learned by heart was repeatedly brushed up by me, lo and behold, it began to make sense. The native-like structures and vocabulary, protons, neutrons, nucleus, solids, my best pals, analyzed and separated out, step by step became available for further creative and original uses. I saw the light. For better or for worse, I haven't become a nuclear physicist. My aunt, nuclear physics, yeah. Nor as I had sagaciously and perspicaciously predicted was I ever an A student of physics till my last day in school. But at least the subject stopped bugging me, stopped being so abstruse, so outlandish, so intimidating. I could live with it. Now I seem to have carried it a bit too far. Let's put it this way. I could peacefully coexist with this. But God knows, and we know, that it's not too little either. If only all of us could boast of it. Memorization. Isn't that something babies do automatically? Learning things by heart comes naturally to them, whether it's being able to recall all the words to a nursery rhyme, or remembering the plot of a story, if not the story itself, word for word. Mothers, grandmothers know what I'm talking about. It comes naturally to them even before one is actually able to read. Interesting. The key is engagement. If you're engaged, if you pay attention, on the basic level, if you care, memory comes automatically. The very act of hearing and reciting nursery rhymes builds brain structures that promote the development of higher order thinking skills. Your toddler, your preschooler is experiencing immense brain development during those precious years. So why not boost this cognitive growth through nursery rhymes? Research demonstrates a correlation between rhyming mastery and reading preparedness. Quite simply, children who learn to rhyme proficiently early on will be better able to learn to read, and read well, because listening and speaking are important precursors to reading and writing. There is some solid science behind it. Literacy and child development experts have determined that kids who know by heart at least 8 nursery rhymes by the time they're 4 years old are usually among the best readers and spellers in their class by the time they're in 3rd grade. This fact alone makes me wish every newborn went home from the hospital with a big book of nursery rhymes. Nursery rhymes are critical. In this digital age, they are more critical than ever. You seem to agree with me on this. Can you believe it? So does Microsoft Corporation. After finding out in their own research that, I quote, "Our attention span has dropped down today to 8 seconds. I kid you not, our attention span is less than that of a goldfish," unquote. And this concerns not only our beloved offsprings, all of us, to a lesser or greater degree, are hooked on our devices and manifest the smartphone addiction symptoms. Feeling chronic anxiety, FOMO, the fear of missing out, lacking impulse control, we keep checking notifications, frequently with total glaring disregard for dire consequences, while crossing the street, while walking in the street teeming with reckless scooter riders. La question reste ouverte. It's an open question. Who is more reckless? How do you like it? Not a bad idea. Sage investment in the well-being of future generations, right? With the primitive poetry of nursery rhymes, parents teach their bundle of joy language. And woe to the babe if they don't. And the little angel, the darling delights in the rhythm and rhyme of the verse. By hearing the music of the verse often enough, he comes gradually to understand first the sounds and eventually the words of which the verse is composed. And this music of the verse is as entrancing, as exhilarating to a small child as it is to a teenager, as it is to any grown-up. Without knowing, the person who has memorized a scrap of poetry has been drawn into the interplay, into the magic, civilizing interplay of music and language, rhythm and sound, melody and words. Verse teaches us something about the patterns and relationships that bind together, knit together the words of which it is composed. The student who memorizes poetry internalizes these rhythmic, beautiful patterns of the English language, and then they become part of his language store, those words we all use every day in speaking and writing. Without memorization, the student's language store is limited. It goes without saying that memorizing poetry is a kind of exercise that strengthens the powers of the mind, just as physical exercise strengthens those of the body. However, no less important, when kids learn something difficult, like poetry by heart, then a great sense of accomplishment, competence, proficiency, so instrumental to the enhanced self-growth of all children, but in particular of those with low self-esteem. For them, their feet, wait a moment, I've done it. An insurmountable obstacle has been overcome. For them, this breakthrough can literally become a springboard to their future academic success, hopefully to their success in life in general. As the acclaimed Irish-English poet Seamus Heaney put it, memorizing poetry gives kids a cultural ear that will set them up for life. Beautiful. Yeah. Seamus Heaney is a Nobel Prize winner in literature, a major poet of the 20th century. He must know a thing or two, no? Learning poetry by heart turns on kids' language capability. It not only teaches them to articulate English words, and even the most narrow-minded, vicious bigots, opponents of memorization, cannot deny the simple fact that rhyme form, rhymed verse, is an excellent means of phonetical drill, both for beginners and advanced students of English. Memorizing and reciting poetry not only facilitates building and expanding their vocabulary, they say it's easier to remember two rhymes together than each of them separately. You've heard it. Which is, of course, true, but it's tantamount to saying that the Nile River is bigger than the Honorable River Hayarkon. It's such a huge understatement. There is so much more to it. My hypothesis, proved true on numerous occasions, It's easier to remember the whole stanza with all the words pertaining to it than one separate word in isolation. On the fingers, nails. On the ground, snails. In the forest, bears. On the trees, pears. A 3-year-old child, not a native speaker of English, but exposed to the language from toddler age up, remember these grammatically somewhat flawed lines in the blink of an eye, just like that. While rhymes suggest their pairing word, which is in itself a powerful memory booster, rhythms coax us into recalling exact syntax that helps us communicate feelings, that helps us understand and analyze the standard, and all along acquire a large, extended vocabulary. And the greater more copy of the vocabulary, the greater one's comprehension of increasingly difficult material. And still the cardinal, paramount virtue of memorizing poetry is that it heightens kids' feel for the intricacies and complexities of the English language, an indispensable attainment if one is to go on to speak, read, and write English with ease. All these benefits, superfluous to mention, are of special value for those students whom incidentally many of you are privileged to teach, who come from homes where books are scarce / non-existent, and the level of literacy, English literacy, is low / non-existent. Repetition and learning by heart, rather underrated in the modern Western society. Thanks God the modern Western society is coming to its senses. There are poetry workshops in the United States, high schools, where it is quite a thing to make graduate students memorize and recite poetry, better late than never. And learning poetry by heart has become a part of a new, more rigorous national curriculum in a number of European countries. Just guess what European country is setting the pace? Katie? Great Britain. Our perennial trailblazers, the land of gracious and chivalrous pioneers. The land of gracious and chivalrous pioneers. I hope these words one day will become iconic, and then it will be my humble gift to my beloved nation. In many respects, owing to a former education secretary, Michael Gove, a hero of mine, an intrepid, undaunted reforming minister, who again and again, for the sake of the public good, greater cause, had laid his career on line before it imploded in the aftermath of the last elections, until the last moment refused to buckle. Mensch par excellence. I just hope, I pray, he's eyeing up political comeback. His country needs him. And of course there are poetry out loud contests in the United States and in Europe. And let's call a spade, let's say the unvarnished truth, altogether neglected in our own backyard, the land of the book. Repetition and learning by heart, the case I would like to make, are two of the most valuable, effective, and pleasurable language learning activities, compatible with creativity and originality of thought. Not only useful, vital for people of all ages, of all walks of life, a priceless boon to the young mind, and a great way to stay mentally sharp as we grow old. My dear colleagues, please don't get me wrong. The learning process is not just about learning by heart, of course. No. Learning is about being able to retrieve information, to critically assess it, to analyze it, to synthesize it. But none of these things can occur unless we have this information at our fingertips, unless we can see how it fits into a bigger picture. And this cannot happen unless this information is safely stored in our memory. For the cherry on top, new insights are gained in the process of memorization. We see things to which we were previously blind. We uncover a play of words, assonance, alliteration, analogies, allusions, anaphors, epistrophes. Vladimir Nabokov, the renowned American-Russian novelist, must have meant that when he declared, there is no such a thing as reading. There is only rereading. A good reader, a thoughtful reader, an active reader is a rereader. The same, by the way, holds for TV shows and movies. We see so much more on a second, third, fourth viewing. We don't truly see anything the first time. We watch it. And there is marked difference between these two activities. The work is so new, so unknown to us. We can hardly make heads or tails of it because we are overwhelmed, because we suffer from sensory overdose, sensory overload. Quite simply, there is too much going on for us to get anything but a glimpse of the work's essence. Memorizing poetry may be the most intimate way to experience a good poem, to feel it rather than skim over it superficially in a perfunctory manner, to gain familiarity with its secrets, hints, undertones so often missed on the page. And then they become a part of you, a treasure that you can carry wherever you go and retrieve it whenever you need it, or somebody else does. Our students, for example, and they do need it. Have you heard it? The sound of my words falling on deaf ears. Cassandra's curse. At the beginning of the presentation, the final question of mine was whether you yourself take the trouble to memorize the poems from the literature program. I felt keenly conscious that the idea did not stir up, did not arouse profound enthusiasm on your part. Nor, I presume, has it been taken up with rapture even now, after my digging its virtue into ears for the better part of an hour. Prejudices die hard. However, those of you who will choose to evaluate the idea objectively, without bias, without impetuosity, will have to admit that it's an unquestionably crystal clear, quintessential win-win situation. Numerous multiple assets, no liabilities whatsoever. There is not a single downside to memorizing the poems from the literature program, nor poetry in general. You seem to be at variance with what I said. Why? No time, no hay tiempo para eso. Debo admitir que es una buena razón. We are so busy, we have no time for anything these days, yet alone for memorizing and reciting poetry. Loco, 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 un completamente verdadero loco. Pero inofensivo, no me tengas miedo. Buena noticia, good news. Memorizing poetry is not time-consuming. No, I am serious. The key to memorizing poetry painlessly is to do it incrementally, in tiny bits, knocking a couple of lines and hooking them onto what you have already learned. For another thing, God forbid, I'm not calling on you to do even that at the expense of your family, friends, recreations, hobbies, but so much time is squandered, or at least not utilized to the full, each and every day, while gridlocked. The loads of time we waste stuck in a traffic jam. Seconds slowly tick into minutes, minutes sluggishly drag into hours. The ennui knows no limit. Fighting it is not in my power. While hitting the gym, working out on the treadmill, running nowhere, while jogging in the park, along the seashore, even better, while walking down the street, through the countryside, while overseeing tests in English in your class, or supervising mock exams in history and mathematics in God knows whose class. Thank you, Etty. A perverse waste of time. Unless you opt for cushioning the hefty blow, for sweetening the bitter cup, by combining the sickening duty with pleasure. It's always a good idea to carry around a poem or two in your bag when it's indecorous to take out your phone. You will always have time to peruse it. Or even better, to bring back into being what you have already learned. In one way or another, you go to the back of the class, take a comfortable seat, or what I always prefer to do, lounge on the wall, stretch your shoulders. Oh, it's always a good idea to square our shoulders. Let's do it together. Likewise, to take a deep breath in, breathe out, and let the music flow. Once, upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. It's some visitor, I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, unsatin rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating to some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more. Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer, said I, "O madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you." Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into the darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore." 'Tis the wind, and nothing more. Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven from the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird, beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore, "Though the crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marvel this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such a name as nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour, nothing farther than he uttered, not a further than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before, on the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, doubtless a day what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of never, never more. But the raven, still beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled the cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking, fancy unto fancy, thinking, what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I thought engaged in guessing, no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I said, divining with my head that is reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, ah, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting. Bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting, get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul has spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never fleeting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul, from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor, shall be lifted, shall be lifted, shall be lifted, nevermore. Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven, divine and sublime. Can you believe that this celestial poem was not taken seriously by most American critics of his day? Even today, our contemporary critics, his compatriots, treat its author, if not contemptuously, then rather condescendingly. The loftiest panegyric they deign to bestow on him is the least talented genius. How do you like it? The undisputed father of the detective story, the author of dozens of masterpieces, the least talented genius. Verily, a prophet is never honored in his home place. And what is remarkable, you do not have to be a Gaius Julius Caesar, whom we incorrectly call Julius Caesar, to do both activities to the best of our ability. So by no means can it be considered, on no account should it be regarded as dereliction of duty on your part. Back on track, back to our subject at hand. Oh yeah, you can memorize poetry while doing your household chores, while standing in all kind of lines, waiting in all kind of queues, of course, while waiting for a bus, for a plane, for a train, for Godot, and you, sir, for your dear better half to go to a party with you at last. Sometimes it seems to take the same time. So can't you the Almighty's magnum opus, way more sophisticated than us, way more sophisticated. And of course, when you're being robbed of your precious time and depleted of your vital energy on the phone by someone on whom for some obvious reason you will not hang up, whose call you will not reject. You don't want to enter into a conversation you're far from being sure will ever end, but you also don't want to incense your close relation, to jeopardize a special bond with your friend. Yeah, I love to quote myself. No, seriously, it's tempting to snub somebody who talks too much. However, a penny for your thought. It's different. I'm not so loquacious and voluble as a rule, am I? It's different. I'm on a mission here. On a futile one, probably. On a fool's errand, perhaps. But still a noble mission, no more, no less than to save mankind. Maybe posthumously. However, it can be somebody who you really care about. It can be your best friend. Yeah, a chatterbox, a garrulous motormouth, but otherwise a charming, a decent person, a friend in need. It can be your highly respected colleague, a genuinely odd higher-up, or not genuinely, dutifully, there is still a mortgage to pay off. You seem to know what I'm talking about, yeah? And first and foremost, your clan, your clansmen. As my dear friend Michael, as my dear late friend Michael Corleone would say, buddy, you're a good man, and I like you. But remember, rule number 2, don't ever take sides with anyone against your family, ever. Oh, Michael, will you please say loudly zing zing? No, ni una vez. Quantas veces? Hasta un mejor por lo menos una docena de veces. After I take a sip of water and resume speaking, to make it look good. So, I have resumed. Guys, I ask you, it's not cool. It's mine? Oh no. What a shame. How embarrassing it is. As if on cue, somebody is after me. Never a dull moment anymore. How do you like my ringtone? What an exquisite, refined taste I have, right? Oh no, Lucy, again. No way. I don't know what to do. Oh, Lucy, what a pleasant surprise. Haven't heard from you since yesterday. Another day, another dilemma. Lucky guess, Lucy, lucky guess. What is preying on your mind today? Quarreled? Oh, Lucy, love is stiff the harmless. How many times, what, walked out on you? Left an hour ago, at your wit's end? Oh, poor dear. Tell me all about. Two roads diverged in the yellow wood. And sorry I could not travel both. Oh, Lucy, I'm sorry to hear that. And be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, it's just as fair. No, Lucy, it's not fair. It's not fair at all. How could he say it to you? And having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for the passing there, and warned them really about the same. The same here, Lucy, I can't agree with you more. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Ah, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted whether I should ever come back. Don't cry, Lucy. I have no doubt one day he shall come back. He has? Oops. Kids, stop making noise. I can't hear what Aunt Lucy is saying. Ah, at the grocery. Long queue. How wonderful. What a relief. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverge in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. All's well that ends well, Lucy. Yeah, go and feed him well, Lucy. It does make all the difference. And thank you. What? One more thing? Of course, Lucy, for you all the time in the world. Oh, who did you meet? Really? Tell me all about it. I met a traveler from an antique land who said to vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand have sunk a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that it sculptor well those passions read which yet survive. Stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear. What words appear on the pedestal? My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Wow. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. It's so beautiful. But it must be written on another pedestal. On this pedestal these words appear. Memorizing poetry is time-consuming, all of you, beware. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. No, memorizing poetry is not time-consuming. If anything, the opposite, the reverse is true. It can save us tons and tons of otherwise senselessly wasted time, wasted irretrievably, irreparably, and irrevocably. But then in class, whenever you recite a poem, your students' eyes are riveted on you. Some are curious, some are skeptical and yet appreciative, such a queer but truthful zeugma. Some are admiring, and some shining eyes are showing their owner's willingness and readiness to emulate their teacher at a price, of course. Suits me fine, I'm really generous. Between you and me and the gatepost, the bonus points are not even from our pockets. They're from aliases, families, one. Prudently and judiciously use them. As many as you need. He might even not notice the difference. Keep it under wraps between you and me. Okay? I'm ready to pay handsomely to my students for any extra effort they make, for memorizing and reciting a poem. And so what if they mispronounce some words, if they get some words wrong and their accent is not perfect? Nor is their teachers, for that matter. It's really beside the point. What really matters is they're exercising their mind and are patently proud of their accomplishment. For reading extra, the most exorbitant price I'm ready to pay is for extra reading. For composing their own poems, literally taken aback. Why? I just hope it doesn't come to you as a surprise. There are students who dabble in billetra, deplorably fewer and fewer with each passing year. A sad indictment of our society, a clear evidence that mankind is in crisis, teetering on the precipice of an abyss. Meine Damen und Herren, wir steuern direkt auf den Abgrund zu. Damas y caballeros, señoras y señoras, nos dirigimos, nos encaminamos directamente hacia la caída. Mesdames et messieurs, nous allons droit dans le mur. Savons nos âmes. It's an egregious, excruciating blunder, which unfortunately I've made on several occasions, and trust me, the pangs of conscience are still here, rankling in my heart, to underestimate our students. Their capacity for creativity can astound us. If only we can help them unlock it. $1 million question is, of course, how? Any suggestions? Absolutely, yeah. By showing our own example, through our own commitment to creativity. We should never regard creativity as something reserved only for special occasions, but rather develop our creative attitude of mind which permeates everything we do. We should offer our students a richly varied menu of creative practices and establish a relaxed, not judgmental atmosphere where students feel confident to let go and not to fear that every move, every step is being scrutinized for errors, which implies attending to what they're trying to say, rather than concentrating on the imperfect way they may express it. One thing is certain, even though creativity cannot be explicitly taught, it can be tacitly learned. Creativity is contagious, and we can pass it on. And which is more, whenever you recite a poem, all students of yours, the weakest students in the weakest classes including, are engaged in the process of learning. The savvy observer is never dormant. How is it so? Why? Oh, for multiple reasons. Because of your bodily carriage, intonation, enunciation, cadence, facial expression, gestures. The most valid reason is, of course, a very strong eye contact. Because it's show time and kids love shows. Who doesn't? And then, is there really any viable alternative to poetry recitation in class? Let's make it clear from the very beginning that a poem pre-recorded on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok is not an option. It's tantamount to leaving our students to their own devices and placing ourselves in a rather precarious, vulnerable position, hushing and shushing a poor dear who will or can neither focus on the assignment nor keep quiet, and by this distracting those few students who can, while the quiet majority are in the never-never land, building castles in their thoughts everywhere in time and space. No, it's counterproductive. The ideal source of listening material to start off any narrative, reciting, reading, storytelling, is of course us, teachers, because we can provide an ideal model for our students who may aspire to speak English as well as we do one day. It's so important we value our own live, interactive, personal presence as reciters, readers, storytellers above any other listening material, any amount of new technology. As it is, today's teens and preteens are overly reliant on it. Computer whiz kids, all and sundry. And we're so proud of them, prodigies indeed. Modern technology is creating the most advanced generation ever, isn't it? No, it is not. It is creating the most distracted generation ever. The West red of all generations, indolent, self-entitled, lacking in social skills, a society of ignoramuses, of unlearned and uncultured automatons. Ignorance is like a delicate exotic fruit, says Lady Bracknell in Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Honest. Touch it and the bloom is gone. If ignorance is bliss, this rising generation has been blessed profusely. Have you ever observed your students leaving school premises at the end of a school day? Nope? Good for you, don't. A flipping, horrible picture, such a scary, creepy sight. Something reminiscent of Michael Jackson's well-known Thriller, remember? A horde of slack-jawed, stoop-shouldered, drooling zombies taking over the neighboring pavement. It's close to midnight, and something evil is lurking in the dark. Under the moonlight, you see a sight that almost stops your heart. You try to scream, but terror takes the sound before you make it. You start to freeze as horror looks you right between the eyes. You are paralyzed. In their case, their nose is buried in their smartphones. Funny? Blood-curdling. The street swarming with those phantoms. And kids are addicted, utterly enslaved to their devices from the cradle. To this end, ABC News did an informal test to see if babies would choose their mother or a slab of electronics with a touch screen. Time after time, again and again, the phone and tablet won. Or that awkward moment when baby picks an iPad over mommy. The practicality a smartphone has brought into our life is phenomenal, but it comes at the expense of shallow thinking. Technology, like water, like fire, like money, is an excellent, tried and true servant, but a terrible, ruthless master. Used in excess today, it is hampering children's development of the thinking process, rational and cognitive skills, memory, research, the only research they do systematically and of their own accord is not altogether wholesome to their mind and body, and therefore not commendable. We have to remember that smartphones and tablets and other forms of digital interaction are no replacement for real human interaction, as well as traditional forms of learning. It's only when kids do genuinely listen that they can build up their speaking skills. So no YouTube, no TikTok for that purpose. What about reading a poem? It's more intricate. Reading. Reading is alpha and omega of mastering a foreign language, and so much more than that. Reading benefits both the young and the old. It empowers our brain to intellectually grow. The whole panoply of the universe to unfold. It can take us wherever we are willing to go. Reading enhances analytical thinking and creativity. It's a source of wisdom, knowledge, and pleasure. Reading is a fundamental skill-building activity. It also boosts our memory in large measure. Reading expands horizons, brings out our strengths. It markedly improves concentration and reduces stress. Reading teaches us the necessity of going to any lengths to overcome obstacles and forge our own path to success. The habit of reading or being read day by day helps in all aspects of life at its every stage. Making one smarter, it's an excellent way to maintain our mental edge as we age. Do not succumb to non-thinking activities. Resist the geek high-tech culture's allure for all self-defeating biases and proclivities. Thought-provoking books are the best cure. Electronic gadgets produce a great deal of noise. The loudest babble, indeed, is from a shallow brook. Still waters run deep. Exercise the right choice. Turn off your computer. Pick up a good book. Wander joyously at the turn of each page, deeper into the world called imagination. Stroll down its roads from an early age and immerse yourself in pure sensation. These were 2 out of my 3 odes dedicated to reading. What I assume, irrespective of the artistic value, convincingly demonstrates my unfailing and unswerving allegiances to it. Let's have it open and above board. With all due respect to our classes, homework, films, songs in English our students are exposed to, all this fades into insignificance in comparison with a child taking a book and reading it for pleasure. And reading a good short story in class, intercepted, interlaced with interactive exercises, summaries, discussions, is fabulous, indispensable, and irreplaceable. Alas, the same cannot be said about reading a short poem in class. Poetry is partly a bodily art. If you read it, especially silently, you inevitably lose this crucial physical dimension. Memorizing and reciting poetry is also fundamentally a musical event, with language serving as its instruments. Whenever you recite a poem, you inevitably give it your own unique interpretation. Schubert, Piano Sonata number 21 in B-flat major. Memorizing and reciting poetry, to crown it all, is a great source of inspiration for you to develop your own writing talent, to start writing your own stuff. And if you have started, it's central to being good at it, or at least, as in my case, better and better, which is also most rewarding and gratifying. Let's take, for example, Roald Dahl's hilarious parody on Charles Perrault's epic fairy tale, Little Miss Red Riding Hood and the Wolf. Many years ago, Dr. Zur had it kindly photocopied and shared with us English coordinators and imposters. I don't remember my then current status. And I've been using it to good effect till today. I'm sure I'm not the only beneficiary who is present today, right? Dahl's poem is inimitable. Funny, burlesque, a simple, not simplistic, a simple, beautiful rhyme scheme, an exceptionally rich vocabulary and language, expressly suitable to teach all age groups, all levels. After introducing the vocabulary of the parody on the board, I asked my students first to identify a famous fairy tale Dahl's poem parodies, and then, without getting into details, to compare and contrast the former and the latter. If you've begun worrying, please don't. I wouldn't do it to you. Of course, I've got an assignment for you as well. During the recitation, I would like you to put your finger on some controversy aroused in the poem, seemingly unwittingly on the part of the author. But as Sigmund Freud, Jacques Lacan, Roland Barthes, Carl Jung, and my daughter claim, there is no such a thing as unintentionally. And far be it from me to dismiss these folks' opinion. One small proviso, it goes with a minor caveat. This problematic issue is not meant to be gun control violation. In Dahl's parody, as many of you know, the small girl is carrying a concealed weapon on her body. It's not that, d'accord? As soon as Wolf began to feel that he would like a decent meal, he went and knocked on Grandma's door. When Grandma opened it, she saw the white sharp teeth, the horrid grin, and Wolfie said, "May I come in?" Poor Grandmama was terrified. "He's going to eat me up," she cried. And she was absolutely right. He ate her up in one big bite. But Grandmama was small and tough, and Wolfie wailed, "That's not enough. I haven't yet begun to feel that I have had a decent meal." He ran around the kitchen yelping, "I've got to have a second helping." Then added with a frightful leer, "I'm therefore going to stay right here till little Miss Red Riding Hood comes home from walking in the wood." He quickly put on Grandma's clothes. Of course, he hadn't eaten those. He dressed himself in coat and hat. He put on shoes, and after that he even brushed and curled his hair and sat himself in Grandma's chair. In came the little girl in red. She stopped, she stared, and then she said, "What great big ears you've got, Grandma." "All the better to hear you with," the wolf replied. "What great big eyes you've got, Grandma," said Miss Red Riding Hood. "All the better to see you with," the wolf replied. He sat there watching her and smiled. He thought, "I'm going to eat this child. Compared with her old grandmama, she's going to taste like a caviar." But then Miss Red Riding Hood said, "But Grandma, what a lovely great big gray fairy coat you have on." "Huh? That's wrong. Have you forgot to tell me what big teeth I've got?" "Oh well, no matter what you say, I'm going to eat you anyway." The small girl smiles. One eyelid flickers. She whips a pistol from her knickers. She aims it at the creature's head, and bang, 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 she shoots him dead. A few weeks later in the wood, I came across Miss Riding Hood. But what a change. No cloak of red, no silly hood upon her head. She said, "Hello, and do please note my lovely fairy wolfskin coat." Roald Dahl, the unsurpassed master of the twist in the tail, macabre, sinister endings. So, what is disturbing? What is disconcerting about Roald Dahl's Little Miss Red Riding Hood and the Wolf? I'll give you a hint, a broad one of that. I used Dahl's parody as a pre-reading activity to introduce a poem from the literature program for 4 points. Once it was also for 5 points. And this poem is not Introduction to Poetry. What poem do I have in the back of my mind? Grandma. Yeah. Semena Shura's Tour de Force, Grandmother. So, what is out of line? What is out of bounds here? Why did the author entitle his book of fairy tale parodies, in which this poem is surely a gem, a jewel, if not the jewel, the diamond in the crown, Revolting Rhymes? Revolting of all epithets? Absolutely. As distinct from Charles Perrault's original, as well as Grimm Brothers and others later versions of the fairy tale, in which both the grandmother and granddaughter are smoothly swallowed by the wolf in one big gulp, as it were, and then miraculously saved by a hunter/woodcutter who with his axe and surgical precision slits the creature's belly to let the damsels in distress out. In Roald Dahl's variation, it is stated unequivocally, black and white, in the most unambiguous manner, that the wolf wolves the old woman, devours her. Yeah, he eats her up in one big bite, similar to our species. Wolf is eating habits leave much to be desired. In his defense, must be noted that nobody had instructed him to chew 33 times, to masticate 30 times each piece of food before swallowing. We were, and seemingly to no avail. Besides, the creature's digestive system is incommensurably superior to ours. Anyway, the bottom line, the wolf gobbles up the old woman, and what is the reaction of the granddaughter? She seems blissfully oblivious of the fact that her dear granny is no longer around. Instead, she's celebrating the acquisition of a new item in her wardrobe. Where does the speaker come across the lassie at the very end of the poem? In the wood. A legitimate question arises: what on earth she is doing there? Looking for another sucker to skin? She's at the kill, a predator. All right, all right, all right. Aber wir wollen nicht übertreiben. Lass uns nicht zu hart, zu hochkäppchen sein, Alex. No seamos demasiado duros con Caperucita Roja y Isabella. Ne soyons pas trop durs, trop sévères envers le petit chaperon rouge, Nathalie. She must see it as a chance of a lifetime to dress up glamorously. It's a fairy tale, everything is possible. She must picture herself putting on all her finery. A wolfskin fairy coat, a sable fur hat, alligator shoes, snake skin with a little bit more luck, rhinoceros skin bag. Why are you looking at me like that? I'm being sarcastic. I'm myself an animal rights activist. My neighborhood's outstanding allurophile. You love cats, don't you? Yeah. Of course it's outrageous, scandalous, infuriating. But you agree so with the fact that the granddaughter is so blasé, so imperious. Anyway, was somebody or has somebody been as selfish and insensitive towards your grandparents as Little Miss Red Riding Hood? Come on, bare your heart. Mira, tu Brutus. I had a premonition that I would be the only bad egg in a good company. But, as the Russian saying goes, a wet drop from a song makes it all wrong. To my profound distress and disgrace, I was an unpardonably lousy grandson, I must confess. By the age of 3, slightly paraphrasing Lady Bracknell, the same Lady Bracknell, I had been careless enough to lose all my grandparents but one, my grandmother Bertha, Bert, an exceptionally delicate and gentle woman with a big heart who, as they say on such occasions, was always there when her help was needed most. But in her case, it's telling truth. My mother undergoing one surgery after another, father working like a Trojan, earning an honest penny. There was not much competition for that where I came from. And taking care of my brother. I spent considerable spans of time in my grandmother's one-room apartment with communal facilities, in comparison with whose abode the humble dwelling place of Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones, Langston Hughes Herring, seems palatial, quite a lucrative option. No playmates, no toys, no television or any other gadgets, and still I have quite a few happy memories of those days. Against all the odds, my grandmother somehow managed to brighten up my life, to add charm to it. When I went to school, I loved to visit my grandmother's place on my own. She always made my favorite soup, whose main ingredient, now looking back on it, I realize it poignantly, was pure love, because all other ingredients were not only most staple, but also hardly fresh. There was no refrigerator in her place. And she gave me pocket money from her meager pension. I was genuinely glad when the grandmother visited our place. She always brought ice cream. And I love ice cream. And all along, I was taking everything she was doing for me, for her family, for granted. Never taking interest in my grandmother as a personality, as a human being, in her past, in her present, in her worries, aspirations. I must have denied their very existence. I was so preoccupied with my own. It's the custom of the youth to be selfish and not to notice the tribulations that occur all around you to other people, even to your near and dear, and think only of your own. I was about 19 years old when my grandmother bird died. Quite a mature age to have understood what's what, to have learned to appreciate and show appreciation. I hadn't. I hadn't had a single meaningful conversation with my grandmother before she died. What makes me feel, apart from being mortifyingly egocentric and careless, also moronic to an extraordinary degree? You can judge for yourselves. Berta was born in 1897. She was 17 years old when the First World War broke out. She lived through 2 world wars, the bunch of Russian revolutions, including the victorious socialist revolution, which, as we were indoctrinated in school, ushered a new era in the history of mankind. Remember? Ushered, war words. It certainly did, and what an era. The pogroms, Berta lived in a small Ukrainian town, one of the epicenters of pogroms. The NEP, the new economic policy, Vladimir Ulyanov Lenin's Red Terror, Joseph Joashvili Stalin's repressions, the horrible famine in the Ukraine in the 1930s, engineered by Stalin, of biblical proportions, when mothers partook of the flesh, I went to the wise. The Second World War, the evacuation, quite a few members of my family fell victims to these adversities, about whom I know next to nothing. Some names pop up in conversations with distant relatives and even on the internet, as in the case with my 2 grand-uncles, who seemingly shared the same bitter fate. Both were young junior officers of the Soviet army, and both perished in the first days of the Nazi invasion. And many, many other historical and family landmarks. My grandmother was a living history, all gone, almost without a trace. The ultimate punishment for my obdurate heart. The answer to the question you're asking yourself is downright yes. It is embarrassing to let the skeleton out of my closet. The wardrobe is overcrowded, it's so stuffy there. One more, one less. It needs airing here and there, now and then. On the other hand, you will hardly disagree that it's rather cool on my part to share it with you in public. And even cooler, zero cool, to share it with my students. What I always do. I strongly believe in breaking the sad news to our kids that their parents and teachers are not perfect before they come to this realization by themselves. Besides, judging by the sly smiles on your faces, you must have figured it out on your own. Yeah, I have an axe to grind. I have an ulterior motive for sharing this unseemly, unsavory fact from my life with my students. 3 ulterior motives, to be more precise. To introduce the first dominant theme of Semene Shiradi's poem, Grandmother, the relationship between grandparents and grandchildren. The second, even more important objective is to draw out my students, candor, father's candor, to be frank with me, but more important with themselves, about their relationship with and attitude toward their grandparents, in the hope they will squeeze a valuable lesson out of my sad narrative. George, don't do what I did. And the sad, marginal, and mercenary aim, I must admit, it is to enjoy reading my students' post-reading assignments. You see, I expect them, as the great English poet William Wordsworth put it, to fill the paper with the breathing of their heart. And I must say that I'm rarely disappointed. I do realize that some of you feel reticent about sharing experiences, stories, happenings from your past with your students. Understandable, comprehensible. However, doing so can be extremely powerful and may lead our students to being willing to reciprocate. What a way of making language both meaningful and memorable. Personal experiences are always huge assets, both in materially fortunate and impoverished classrooms. The second major theme of Semeni Shuradi's poem Grandmother is la vieillesse, old age. I bring it out through my own triptych, a set of 3 associated poems with very elaborate, even cryptic titles. Old Age 1, Old Age 2, you're a parapsychologist, Old Age 3. Old Age 1 and Old Age 2 serve in their turn to illustrate the first high-order thinking scheme my students encounter, which is none other than distinguishing different perspectives. The very word distinguishing makes their flesh creep, is rather chilling to their fragile bones. The introduction ought to be as thorough and explicit as possible. The speaker of Old Age 1 is a disgruntled, grouchy person who sees old age as little short of calamity, a series of dark days, which would inevitably make the poem sound grotesque, if not ludicrous, but for the morbid fact there are quite a few elderly individuals around of such gloomy, downhearted, morose disposition. Mr. Catanzaro, by the way, is potentially one of them. When a man's career comes to a full stop, having failed to attain the goals set long ago, he tends to regard his entire life as a total flop. Disillusionment is his primary foe and woe. Declining years bring on forgetfulness and inability to properly converse, hear, see, walk, concentrate, and the oldster gets used to insecurity and immobility. He will sit in his armchair, daydream, and vegetate. Bitterly out of phase with younger generations, elderliness unavoidably brings about future shock. There is a trend towards gossiping, pompous orations, and a tendency to hypercriticism around the clock. Hardly anything going well for them, confused, a good many opes feel listless and drink a lot. For those tired souls, wretched and bruised, hitting the bottle is the only bright spot. Growing old is an unqualified disaster. Nothing seems to be nice about old age, except that our life goes by faster to let us ungracefully leave its stage. Gloom and doom, I know. Don't worry, Old Age 2 is written by me from a different perspective, even though not from a diametrically opposite one, aspiring to be fair and balanced like Fox News. Aging is a cold fact of life. It's a given. From the tender nails, we human beings are impatient to get older. We are driven to learn and experience new things. We stretch ourselves and go full blast It's only after 40 years that we realize that time tragically goes by way too fast to accomplish much before the music dies. We begin to regularly take stock of our lives by the goals reached and those left undone, until our doddering, senile mind deprives us of thinking lucidly, one by one. Absolutely nothing is good about old age. Some advantages are obvious. Let's be fair. The escape from the 9-to-5 squirrel cage, the discounts, deference, social security, Medicare. There is time to read, nap, travel, study, or mouthing another tired platitude to catch up with an old hobby or hobby. It all depends on our health, savings, and attitude. Freedom is a glorious gift, a divine blessing. Doing what we want, when we want, is so great. The bitter irony is, it's also staggeringly depressing. Our physical limitations may prove it to come too late. Growing old is another point in time, a phase, a chapter at the end of a journey that began long ago. The autumn of our life cannot relive the good summer days, but it's welcomed by all, considering the alternative. You know. Old age 3 is a glimpse into an old person's life. It could be another episode in life of Shirazi's grandmother. The old woman lived in a country with a less benign climate. 6:30 on an icy winter morning. Evelyn's heart is pervaded with dread. Thank you, God, for another day dawning, but it's so hard to get out of bed. Evelyn gently eases her arthritic knees over the edge of the bed in sharp pain. She sits and waits, scarcely dares to breathe. Will my long-suffering feet fail me again? Slowly the ache in her leg subsides. Evelyn braces herself and stands up. Groaning wearily, hands at her sides, she hobbles. Well done, old tub. What an achievement, she adds with a sigh. Not only I've lived to see a new day, I have mobilized, never say die, the feeble body of mine in a way. Fortunately, I still have a mind I can use. Some old ones can't. Our aged brain is frail. I certainly wouldn't like to be in their shoes. Losing my senses to boot is beyond the pale. And now the students are ready for the real thing. Semene Shirazi, grandmother. I hadn't asked her much, just how she felt. And she told me all about her day, and how she'd washed the sheets, and how she could not understand why the towel got so heavy when it was wet. She'd also sound the mattresses, such tired bones, and so much to do. And my eyes filled with tears when I thought of her, how I was simply going to say salam, and so many words would have been trapped inside her. I would have passed by as if what lay between those bedclothes was just old life, and not really my grandmother. 20 lines. So potent, each and every one of them. We love you, Semene Shirazi, we love your poem. The third and the final major theme of Semene Shirazi's poem, Grandmother, is family relationships, of which the relationship between grandparents and grandchildren is an integral part. Once again, I bring it in mainly through my own rhymes, dedications to various members of the family, some of which I would like to share with you now. And the first dedication is naturally to Mother. When it's oppressively hot, your caress is fresh like a spring breeze. Your sunny, radiant smile keeps me warm when it's bitterly cold. Your quiet, uplifting wisdom gives me a sense of inner peace. Every step of my life is safeguarded by your heart of gold. You're a heavenly creature brought down to earth for me, who has lovingly taught me many a valuable lesson. I owe you everything what I am and ever hope to be. Thanks, Mom, for being such a wonderful person. I don't know what it means, a life devoid of love. I bask in its tender glow each hour of every day. Its light is brighter than the dazzling sun above. Its depth is fathomless. It cannot drain away. My mama's love is endless. It knows no limit. Her selfless heart adores me no matter what. Her dream is sweet, provided I am in it. Her trust is absolute. Impartiality is not. The second dedication is to father, of course. The speaker of the poem is a young girl, a teenager, probably. And this poem is an elegy, a mournful lament for a person who has died. What requires on my part prudence and discretion and a preliminary conversation with home teacher, school counsel. My dad was the epitome of what a father should be, compassionate and understanding to the nth degree. A strong, handsome man, good-natured and gentle, downright noble-minded and a bit sentimental. He could lose with dignity, celebrate it with grace, didn't get what he wanted, but ran a good race. Without being affected by the disease to please, Papa put other people's happiness before his. He instilled in me a passion for giving and sharing. He taught me to be thoughtful, loving, and caring, to show empathy, to feel every person's pain. Thank you, Father, for making me humane. You always told me to keep my head up, to be brave, to never let any mishap turn me into a self-pity slave. You inspired me to take up challenges, provided support, and I can assure you, Dad, it was not all for naught. You comforted me and insisted I look on the bright side. You respected and trusted me. I was your joy and pride, God's gift, an invaluable jewel, the most precious pearl, the loveliest angel, little Miss Sunshine, Daddy's girl. I often find myself thinking of our roaming around, Father, of our sacred dreams and memories we shared with each other, of those many arguments and jovial banter we had over the years, but as I'm doing it, my heart is crying, and I have to brush away tears. Not a day, dear Daddy, passes by that I do not miss you, and my tears dry. Upon my word and honor, no more maudlin, dewy-eyed, lovey-dovey poems for today. Let's move to something humorous. Sisters. No other relationship, in my opinion, falls more smoothly into this category than the relationship between sisters. Sisters, too. I'll spare you the trouble of listening to sisters squabbling, locking horns, banging heads with each other. Jealous rivalry, pure adoration, sullen poverty, a jovial mood, bitter spite, and deep admiration exist side by side in the sisterhood. Oh yes, we know each other inside out, even better than our mother and father, each other's dreams and, no doubt, how to cut to the quick one another. I love my sister dearly. Blood is thicker than water. But I confess, at times, really, I wish I were an only daughter. No? Maybe sister 3. Sister 3. Diana and I. Maybe this is closer to you. Diana and I. Di and I. Diana and I do not resemble each other. As much as my sister takes after our mother, our father and I look like 2 peas in a pod. When we say we are sisters, all gasp, how odd. We also have large differences in personality, overall lifestyle, outlook, and mentality. To begin with, I'm very tall and scrawny, whereas my sister is chunky and brawny. The only physical characteristic we share is our so unruly, clown-like, wiry hair. My mop is red, hers is dark brown. We contemplate it and wear a frown. My eyes are glossy green, and eyes are blue. Where is the justice? I don't have a clue. I've got a bulbous nose, hers is aquiline. The lesser of 2 evils is no doubt mine. My downward sloping brows show ambition. I always target only number 1 position. Diana's eyebrows are heavy, close-knit. My sister is reserved and sensitive a bit. My ears are protruding, the eyes are small, and neither set is musical at all. My lips are thin, and hers are thick. Was she entitled, Mom, to cherry pick? My forehead is a source of special pride. It's beautifully arched and high and wide. The forehead of Diana is narrow and low. What does it mean? I think you know. My chin is long. It's clear right away that I invariably stick to what I say. My sister's chin is short and round. She tries to reach a middle ground. My cheeks are hollow and pale. I've never looked for cakes and ale. Diana's cheeks are full and ruddy. She lives it up while I just study. I'm a success in school. My sis is less, but who is more athletic? Take a guess. When ill-bred people give us a stare, they're self-conscious. I don't care. We have nothing in common. Worlds apart. A harsh winter, a summer, mind and heart. Yet, as different as we are in every possible way, I can't imagine life without her 1 single day. Among family relationships, Among family relationships, the most intriguing, the most fascinating, the most Freudian ones, in my opinion, of course, are those between or among sisters and between, what is your take on it? Brothers. Brother, I have a brother. Everything's black and white, so clear. Maybe. I, for one, believe it's between father and son, right? You agree with me? So, by the way, so many poems and stories in the literature program, if you have noticed, deal with the presence or absence of the father figure. It's interesting. The last 2 poems which I would like to share with you today are dedicated to dad-son relationship. And the former one, for a change, is not written by me, sadly so. Could have solved quite a few problems. It's one of my favorite poems, even though rather disparaged by many critics, and not only the British ones, and very much loved by people in the street, where my allegiances are. The author is a famous, also controversial poet and short story writer of the turn of the 20th century, Rudyard Kipling, and the title of the poem is If, Father's Advice to His Teenage Son. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not being tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, do not give way to hating, and yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposed as just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with broken tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on 1/10 of pitch and toss and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they're gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And which is more, you'll be a man, my son. If contains multitude of characteristics deemed essential to the ideal man, almost all of them express stoicism and reserve, the classic British stiff upper lip. In particular, a man must be humble and patient and persevering and truthful and rational and unperturbed, as cool as a cucumber in response to cruel men and deleterious events, groovy. But really, how many James Bonds are there in the world? None. You don't. Why? There must be. It may be in this hall, and some ladies can boast of their worst halves of being as such, right, lady? No? But most of us dismally fall short of Kipling's requirements for virility. Men read the poem and feel embittered. Men, overgrown babies. When men are upset with an author, their revenge is imminent. Their vengeance is impending, looming over the author in the form of parodies. There are hundreds, thousands upon thousands of parodies of the poem. The fact testifying to its popularity and my ignorance. I was absolutely unaware of the fact when, after memorizing it, I was inspired to write something in the same vein. And which is more, you'll be a woman, and which is more, you will be a teacher, alas for fondest prayers. Women and seamen, teachers and preachers, farmers and plumbers, bakers and beer makers, undertakers. Yeah, a somber, dignified profession. Everything has been covered many times in most cases. Quite a frustrating experience. But then I had a song of Lady Gaga, Born That Way, which is a song in response to the famous song, another famous song of Madonna, Express Yourself. I'd heard both songs many times before. What I mean, I took the trouble to perceive their lyrics. Could have spared myself this trouble. The titles of the songs vividly enough reveal the essence. Madonna's Express Yourself. Hitch your wagon to the star, be what you want to be, high fly. To which Lady Gaga suavely but sternly retorts, go to bath with your wise advice. I am what I am. Leopard doesn't change its spots. And I had a brainwave. I wrote a poem in response of the grown-up son to his aged father. God forbid, my endeavor is not a parody. I love the original too much. I call it an affectionate pastiche, imitation. The problem is it is not. Even the rhyme scheme is different. One thing is authentic, that it's an affectionate, whatever it is. If I ever resolve to mend my ways and engrave on my heart one phrase, just one tenet, today is my only day, if I say what I mean and mean what I say, if I stop regretting the past and let go of its hurts at last, if I choose not to fear tomorrow, be subdued by sadness and sorrow, if I take responsibility for my actions, identify my priorities, manage distractions, and stay focused to get important things done, if I don't hold on to anger and forgive everyone, if I put up a hard fight when the going gets tough, seek no validation to consider myself good enough, if I forbid a small issue to snowball into a big problem, while facing predicaments, I lay myself out to solve them, if I don't spend money like it's going out of style and ignore the sweet lure of carefree life all the while, if I recognize the futility of breaking my neck just to squander my entire monthly paycheck, if thinking about the things I don't have, I don't frown, if I get out of the habit that's been dragging me down, if from the grip of guile and deceit I altogether break free, don't lie to others, nor pal up with those who lie to me, if I daily read, write, try something new, and engage in activities I really love to do, if I exercise, stick to a healthy, balanced diet, allot myself time to revel in peace and quiet, if I am not worried about the things I cannot control, prevent negativity from coming into my brain and soul, if I steadfastly keep my mind going in the right direction, yet never condemn myself for failing to achieve perfection, if I neither request that everybody leave me alone, nor make other people's problems always my own, if I don't let power, authority, or my natural ability turn my head and exceed my sincere humility, if I break the walling in self-pity victim attitude and instead cultivate appreciation and gratitude, if over trifles I don't lament and get into a stew, if I learn to say, I'm sorry and I love you, then I'll be able to lead a happy, meaningful life. I'll be admired and lauded by my high-minded wife, looked to for guidance by my high-principled brother, and which is more, you won't harangue me, Father. Thank you. Poetry, the miraculous power of poetry. Poetry can make you laugh and cry. Poetry can make you think and feel. Poetry can teach you and sustain you and surprise you. Memorizing and reciting poetry can literally transform you. To recapitulate it all, with the young children engaging in poetry, accelerates the speed at which they learn to speak, read, and write, improves memory and academic performance, and even supports better sleep. It does. For adults, an abundant evidence shows learning poetry by heart enhances their ability to communicate, improves memory and analytical thinking, increases brain capacity, and keeps dementia at bay. It can significantly stave off the typical cognitive decline. Memorizing and reciting poetry will give you a happier, reach a longer mentally active life. Go for it. My dear colleagues, after you're bearing with me for around 3 hours, I believed I'm entitled to call you my friends. My dear friends, I've learned firsthand there are incredible memory capacities latent in all of us. Let's bring them out in ourselves, in our families, in our students. Let's bring the art of memory back into our classroom. It's about time, long overdue to do it. Thank you. Those shining eyes.